Welcome to Chapter 11 of Sherlock Holmes, The Case of the Silent Sovereign, a 12-part Sherlock Holmes mystery. Get comfortable, close your eyes, and let the story unfold. If you missed the previous chapter, please visit to my channel and enjoy the journey of Sherlock Holmes. Chapter 11, The Sovereign Unmasked. The scene in the great Equatorial building was a tableau of frozen tension. Below, Lestrade and his men had subdued the sailor, his brutish strength no match for the organized force of the law. But above, on the high iron platform, the true battle was about to be fought. Lord Harrington stood like a cornered king on his castle ramparts, the deadly weapon in his hand, his face a mask of cold, aristocratic fury. "So, Mr. Holmes," Harrington said, his voice echoing in the vast, silent space. "It seems you're more than just a meddling detective. You are a man of considerable, if misplaced, talent." Holmes stood at the foot of the spiral staircase, his lantern held high, its light illuminating the face of his adversary. He was unarmed, seemingly vulnerable, but his posture was one of absolute confidence. He was not a man of physical violence, but a warrior of the mind. And this was his chosen battlefield. "And you, Lord Harrington," Holmes replied, his voice calm and measured, "are more than just a disgruntled patriot. You are a thief and a murderer." A flicker of anger crossed Harrington's face, but it was quickly suppressed, replaced by an air of weary condescension. "Murder is a vulgar word, Mr. Holmes. I am a pragmatist. Alistair Finch was a brilliant but naive man. He created a power that he did not have the courage to control. He would have destroyed it, deprived the empire of the very tool it needs to ensure its survival in a dangerous world." "So you took it from him," Holmes said, his voice cold. "You took his research, and you took his life." "I did what was necessary," Harrington retorted, his voice rising with a sudden passionate intensity. "This nation was built by men who were not afraid to make difficult decisions, Mr. Holmes. Men who understood that power, true power, is the only thing that guarantees peace. Finch's weapon in our hands will make Britain the silent sovereign of the world. An empire that can quell its enemies without firing a single shot." He gestured with a device in his hand. "This is the future, Mr. Holmes. A future that you, with your sentimental attachment to outdated moral codes, are trying to prevent." "The future you describe, Lord Harrington," Holmes said, his voice ringing with a sudden powerful conviction, "is a future of fear, of tyranny, of silent unseen death. It is a world where no one is safe, where a man can be struck down in his own home by an invisible hand. That is not a future I am willing to accept." He took a step onto the first rung of the spiral staircase, his eyes fixed on Harrington's face. "You speak of patriotism, of the good of the empire. But your actions betray a different motive. You did not kill Finch for the good of the nation. You killed him for the good of yourself, and for the small, bitter cabal of the Prometheus Club, who could not bear to see a man of great genius surpass them." Harrington flinched, as if Holmes's words had been a physical blow. "You know nothing of the Prometheus Club." "I know that it was a nest of envy and resentment," Holmes continued, his voice relentless, each word a carefully aimed dart. "I know that you, its leader, were the most envious of all. You saw Finch's genius, and you coveted it. You wanted his power, his legacy, and when you could not have it, you took it." He took another step up the staircase. You used your connections, your influence, to frame an innocent man, Silas Thorne. You planted the poison. You manufactured the evidence. You are not a patriot, Lord Harrington. You are a common criminal, hiding behind the flag. Harrington's face was now a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. The veneer of aristocratic calm had been stripped away, revealing the raw, ugly ambition that lay beneath. "You are a clever man, Mr. Holmes," he hissed, his hand tightening on the weapon. "Too clever for your own good." He raised the device, aiming it directly at Holmes's chest. "This is a prototype, a smaller version of Finch's design, but it is no less deadly. A single, silent pulse, and your meddling will be at an end." Lestrade, from the floor below, cried out in alarm, "Holmes, get down!" But Holmes did not move. He stood on the staircase, his face calm, his eyes fixed on the weapon in Harrington's hand. He seemed to be in a state of profound, almost meditative, concentration. "It is a remarkable piece of engineering, Lord Harrington," Holmes said, his voice strangely conversational. "The resonant chamber, the focusing lens, the power source, a work of genius. But like all works of genius, it has its flaws, its vulnerabilities." He took another step up the staircase. He was now only a few feet from Harrington, well within the weapon's effective range. "And its greatest vulnerability," Holmes continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper, "is the delicate calibration of the primary resonating crystal. A single misaligned component, a piece of metal no bigger than a grain of rice, would be enough to disrupt the energy flow, to render the entire device useless." Harrington stared at him, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "What are you talking about?" Holmes smiled, a thin, grim smile of pure intellectual triumph. "I'm talking, Lord Harrington, about a small brass screw. A screw that I removed from Lord Finch's laboratory on the day of my first visit. A screw that I suspected was a vital component of his prototype. A screw that, I'm willing to wager, is missing from the device you now hold in your hand." He held up his hand, and there, resting on his palm, was the tiny brass screw. Harrington's eyes widened in disbelief. He looked from the screw in Holmes's hand to the weapon he was holding. He saw the empty socket, the missing component. He understood in that single devastating moment that he had been outmaneuvered, outthought, utterly and completely defeated. His face crumpled, the rage replaced by a look of pure, animal panic. He was a king who had been dethroned, a sovereign who had been unmasked. He was no longer a patriot, a visionary, a man of power. He was just a common murderer, his weapon useless, his grand ambitions reduced to dust. With a cry of despair, he threw the useless device to the ground, where it shattered on the iron floor of the platform. He turned as if to flee, but there was nowhere to go. Lestrade and his men swarmed up the staircase, and this time there was no resistance. They took Lord Harrington into custody, his face a mask of stunned, silent defeat. The great man, the pillar of the establishment, was a prisoner. As they led him away, Lestrade paused at the foot of the staircase, his face a mixture of awe and grudging admiration. "Holmes," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "How did you know? How could you possibly have known about the screw?" Holmes descended the staircase, his face calm, his composure absolute. "I did not know, Inspector," he replied, with a slight shrug. not for certain, but I observed that the prototype on Finch's desk was missing a single small component. I surmised that it was a safety feature, a way for him to disable the device quickly and easily. It was a logical deduction, and logic, Inspector, is the most powerful weapon of all. He looked around the vast silent hall, at the captured sailor, the defeated aristocrat, the shattered weapon. The case of the silent sovereign was over. The conspiracy had been broken, the killers brought to justice. But as I looked at my friend's face, I saw not triumph, but a deep and profound sadness. He had won the battle, but he knew that the war, the eternal war between knowledge and wisdom, between ambition and morality, was far from over. He had unmasked the sovereign, but he knew that the hunger for power, the dark and dangerous desire that had driven Lord Harrington, would always be a part of the human heart. And that was a mystery that not even the great Sherlock Holmes could solve. Thank you for listening to Chapter 11 of Sherlock Holmes, Sherlock Holmes and the Case of the Silent Sovereign. If you enjoyed the mystery and want more stories like this, please subscribe to the channel, give it a like, leave a comment, and share it with fellow mystery lovers. Your support helps keep the stories alive. See you in the next chapter.